Hey guys, Script here with another video, and I posted this on Twitter yesterday and got a lot of good feedback. A lot of people were positive about my rankings of the episodic films. Now, I don't include Rogue One or Solo or any of those. This is just episodes 1 through 9, and a lot of people were really positive, and a lot of people agreed. And I'm curious to see what you think on YouTube. Oh, that's cool. Echo Base Network agrees with my ratings. I think 100%. All that to say, I wanted to explain because a lot of people are like, oh, why do you think that or whatever? And I wanted to just do it in YouTube video so much easier. So we'll start off as episode 1. And so I gave episode 1 a 5 out of 10, and there's very clear reasons for this. So number 1, it doesn't get high marks when you have a character like Jar Jar Binks. You just don't. It's not anything against Jar Jar Binks per se. It's just the way that the humor was changed from the OT, which was so much more. I have a video explaining this, which was so much more complex and had to do with the relationships with people. And changing that into like slapstick kind of stupid humor, I think that took away a lot. I did not like the way that Anakin flukily did stuff. Like, he flukily happened to fly into the Trade Federation ship and happened to shoot at the right spot. And I thought he should have been a side character with somebody that was actually doing that. You know what I mean? Some pilot of some sort that actually knew what he was doing or something like that. Maybe he helps him in some way, but for him to just do that all flukily was kind of dumb. I also thought it probably would have been beneficial to start off the trilogy where Anakin was older. That's not a points taken off criticism. That's just another criticism that I have. But the reason it gets a 5 is because the pod racing scene was very well done. It was very cool to watch. And the final duel with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon was really good as well. So for those reasons, it gets a 5. It would have been lower because, frankly, it's not that exciting of a movie. It's got its issues. And it was such a step down from where we finished things in Return of the Jedi. So again, I'm speaking as somebody who watched them in the order that they were released. It was such a step down that I just didn't feel like it deserved more than a 5. All that to say, it's a satisfactory film. I wouldn't call it a great film by any stretch of the imagination, although it did have some great moments. The Attack of the Clones movie had really good visuals. The humor started to improve in that movie when you had Obi-Wan and Anakin, and some of the interactions that they have were well done. But there's just some nonsensical things. Like, for example, the bounty hunter that shapeshifts. Why would you shapeshift into your bounty self and be caught? Like, why wouldn't you shapeshift into something else? Things of that nature. I hated R2 using rockets to fly around because, again, this takes place before the OT, so why would you have him flying around? There were opportunities in the OT where you'd be like, why wouldn't he use it now? So it just makes things in the OT more off-putting with stuff like that. I did not like, again, George went with the slapstick humor with 3PO and the droids and his head and everything, which wasn't too bad. It was sort of 3PO-ish, but I felt like it was a little too much. It dragged on too long. I also thought the scene in the factory when they're like dodging things and stuff it was just way too long, and it just started getting cringy after a while. And it felt like a video game to me. And then, of course, the dialogue with Anakin and Padme was just atrocious. And even the whole idea that you send Anakin to guard this chick who's like dressing super hot and you know that he's in love with her, and like, what did you think he was going to do? You know what I mean? So let's send a horny teenager to watch over a super hot chick who dresses provocatively in front of him, and we know that he really wants her, and he's hormonal, but we're trying to make him, like, send him to watch over some old lady. Like, send him to watch over Maz. What are you sending him? Like, so there's things like that make that movie kind of dumb. There are things that I like. Obviously, certainly some of the action sequences were really good. The Battle of Geonosis was pretty cool overall. I also liked the Dooku fight with Anakin and Obi-Wan. What I didn't like was Yoda using a lightsaber. I know everyone's going to think I'm crazy, but the way they made him use it and flipping and jumping around, like, Yoda's an old man. Even in these films, he's an old man. He shouldn't be just flipping around like a crazy, like, guy. Like, if he was going to wield a lightsaber, he should have done it with a more sort of old man style. But having said that, I don't like Palpatine or Yoda having lightsabers. I think they're old guys that are ultra powerful, and to me, they're beyond a lightsaber, right? Like a lightsaber is a Jedi weapon, it's a Sith weapon, but the top tier powerful dudes like Palpatine and like Yoda are past that. Like they're so powerful in the Force that that's inconsequential. They don't need a stupid lightsaber. So that part to me kind of took away from Yoda a bit, and it just made it less cool. I did like when he sort of absorbed the lightning from Dooku. That was classic Yoda. But then when he busts out the lightsaber, I don't know. It was just too much for me. So that's why I give that one a 4 out of 10. There's several reasons. Again, still has really cool visuals, good fight scenes and stuff like that. But and some of the interactions, like I said, with Anakin and Obi-Wan were pretty cool. Episode 3, there is a lot to like about it. And you might be surprised with some of the things I don't like. But I did like the transition of Anakin to Darkseid. I thought that was well done, although there were a couple deleted scenes I would have added in Attack of the Clones and taken away some of the other dumb stuff that I mentioned. That would have helped that along and spurred it along better, because there's some really good scenes with Palpatine and Anakin that are taken out. I really like the manipulation. Obviously, the Obi-Wan and Anakin lightsaber duel is really phenomenal, but it goes on for way too long. The 25-minute lightsaber duel is way too long, and you didn't need them to be like landing on little droid things, and like it got way, like George went way crazy over the top for me personally. I still like the fight overall. I like the way it ends and all that stuff, but it just was way too long. I thought Anakin going in and just slaughtering a bunch of kids was way over the top, and you didn't need that story-wise. He can turn into a bad guy without the first thing he does is go to the Jedi Temple and kill some kids, right? And not only that, he walks into the room and there's nobody there. Like, you would think that the Jedi would prioritize the kids and maybe surround them, like have like 10 or 15 of them surrounding them so that the clone troopers aren't going to shoot them. But there was just nobody there. And it's the Jedi Temple. There's Jedi all over the place. The implication is that, oh, well, they just got shot so quickly they couldn't do that. Well, I don't know. To me, that was a little corny and a little too much. And he didn't need to kill all the kids. That was really over the top and needless. Obi-Wan could have seen the hologram of him bowing to the Emperor. He also could have seen him killing grown Jedi, and it still could have had the same impact. Anakin's turned to the dark side. He didn't need that. That was way too much. You know, the way the fight ends with Obi-Wan and Anakin and him turning into Vader was really cool. I love that. George adding the no was stupid. Okay, that was dumb. But him turning into Vader was still really cool. The Palpatine manipulation. Oh, you killed Padme in your anger, blah, blah, blah. I thought that the dialogue delivery from Hayden in certain instances wasn't very believable. His angry tone had this sort of air of, it felt forced, especially when he was yelling at Obi-Wan and with Padme and all that stuff. It felt a little forced. So I wasn't a huge fan of all of his acting in this. Some of it was good and some of it just wasn't very good. Obviously, the beginning sequence, the first space battle was really cool. They put a lot into that, and I really liked that. I liked when they went and they saved Palpatine and the whole Dooku thing and how much did Dooku know and all that stuff. And that was pretty cool too. I liked that. So overall, like, the movie was good. It was a 7, but those few things take away. For me anyway, those things just you know, make that fight a little shorter. You don't have to have him killing younglings, and, you know, retake a couple of those shots where some of the anger tone in his voice kind of felt forced. But otherwise, it was a good movie. It tells the story, it does a good job. And so I liked it. And so when you look at my prequel trilogy overall, it's got a 16 out of 30. And I've always said on my channel, I've always said on Twitter, I always found the prequels satisfactory. They tell the story. They don't take away from the story or the OT characters or anything else. But there's just some issues with the way the stories are delivered that needs work. And the story of Anakin and Padme is a prime example, right? The story is told, it's fine. They didn't ruin the story. However, the delivery of it with some of the dialogue and cringiness of it in the sand and all that stuff was kind of weak. So 16 out of 30, that makes it a passing grade. It's fine. It's okay. I don't mind it at all. I can rewatch it. But it's not as enjoyable as the original trilogy, which now we go to episode 4. I give this a 9 out of 10, partly because this is the movie I started out with in the series. And it's just really cool. I mean, the first time I saw it, I was just shocked. And I didn't even see it in theaters. I saw it on VHS tape. So I was just blown away by it, and it's just an amazing film. I don't know what to say. The only reason it gets a 9 and not a 10, it's funny now, and we like making fun of it, but Mark Hamill, some of his acting is pretty bad, especially the beginning of the movie. He progressively gets better. Like Tachi Station, some of that was a little cheesy. I thought they could have done a little bit, even in the 70s, I thought they could have done a little bit of a better job with certain things, like when Obi-Wan cuts off the guy's arm and there's a bunch of blood on the ground and stuff like that. It would have been pretty easy to put like a singed, glowing ember thing in that prop, and that would have been a better. And now I'm talking about the original. Like this one, Han shoots first, all that stuff. You start adding in some of the stuff that George adds in later in the special editions, and the grading goes down because those things were totally unnecessary and dumb. But just a great movie. Not a lot to complain about. A couple little issues, like I said, so it gets a 9. Empire Strikes Back is one of the best movies ever made. It's in my top 5. It is, and again, I'm speaking as someone who saw the movies in order of release, like in succession. I didn't know he was going to tell Luke he was his father, none of that stuff. The prequels hadn't come out yet. The whole movie is phenomenal, and the bad guys win, and Han, you don't know if he's okay, and you're nervous about Han. You're scared for Luke because of the revelation of Vader being his father. The lightsaber duel with Luke and Vader is just great. It's perfect. It shows Vader toying with him, but it also shows Luke making some progress in the Force too. When he does the big jump in the carbon freezing chamber, and his ability to wield the lightsaber is good, even though Vader is toying with him ultimately. Just the whole idea that Luke's struggle went from saving the rebellion from this Death Star to now training with Yoda and having to face his dad, and it becomes a more personal story. And I think that's really what pushed Star Wars over the top, was the Empire changing from just sort of a good versus bad war, and the characters that are involved in that. And it was interesting and all that stuff. Leia, all those things. It's kind of more personal for her at the beginning, but to now shift it to this really personal story along with the war. So you're adding that big element of that personal story with Luke and Vader. And then, of course, further on involving Leia in that. It just took it to a whole other level, and there's just nothing to complain about in this film. I mean, Hoth is great. Cloud City is phenomenal. George really did change things up and really added an amazing set of environments in this movie. Just a well put together film in basically every way. I don't really know what I can say that's bad. I can't think of anything. Even the way Yoda pretends to be this stupid little alien, when he first interacts with Luke on purpose and all that stuff. I really like that. I just thought the whole thing was just really well done. Jedi has the best scene in Star Wars as far as I'm concerned, when Luke is talking to his dad Vader on Endor, and you start to see the Vader break a little bit, and you get that emotional weight to their final fight, which is just phenomenal. Just a great movie overall. Luke shows up years later. He's now seasoned. He's very close to being a master now. He's confident, and he's so confident as a Jedi. So he's just evolved so much from A New Hope, Empire, and then to Return of the Jedi, and the relationship between Han and Leia has really evolved. That's another thing I forgot to mention about Empire. Their fighting and their passion and everything was just so well done. So much chemistry on screen between the two actors. And then, of course, that relationship takes it to another level with all the fun and funny and banter and all that along with it. In Jedi, you just see that progress with all the main characters. They're taking it to another level. The visuals, like the battle for Endor in space, is just really well done. I mean, they did a phenomenal job. I don't mind another Death Star that's half being built. I thought visually it was really cool. And why wouldn't you, if you're the Empire, try one more, or have a backup? Right, just like the United States, right? They'd always have a backup of whatever it was that they were trying to produce militarily or whatever. I thought that was fine. Certainly didn't need another one in the sequels, but I loved the scenes with the Emperor. You never really got the Emperor up until Jedi, and then you start getting lots of live action scenes with him. And when he first leaves the shuttle and meets with Vader and rise my friend, and you start to get that. And then, of course, the Emperor is beyond lightsabers. Take your weapon, strike me down with it. But he knew all along, I don't need a lightsaber. Lightsabers are for piddly, underlings. I'm Palpatine. Which again goes back to what I was saying about Yoda and the lightsaber, and I wasn't a fan of Palpatine wielding a lightsaber. By the way, in Revenge of the Sith, I forgot to mention that. That's another reason it gets a 7, not a 10, an 8 or 9 or 10. So yes, the bad points of Return of the Jedi were, I thought the Ewoks were fine. I had no problem with this little teddy bear race of aliens. That was fine, because they were vicious in a way, and they did have military tactics. But I really wish that George would have given them maybe a little more technology to sort of justify their ability to fight this battle. And then I also wish the stormtroopers weren't just so terribly incompetent. There should have at least been a few shots of stormtroopers manhandling Ewoks or doing something, because it just felt like the stormtroopers were just so absolutely utterly useless. And we had just seen such a cool scene with the speeders, and the stormtroopers definitely challenged Luke and Leia in that scene, but they were just fodder. And being fodder for Chewie with an AT-ST is one thing. Being fodder for a bunch of teddy bear guys with sticks is a little bit stupid. And they should have changed that. So that's my criticism. That's why it gets an 8 out of 10. It would have got a 9 or a 10 if it wasn't for that. If they would have just made the Ewoks a little more believable. As far as the sequels go, 7's a 2 because Rey's just way too OP. It doesn't explain it. Nothing makes sense. She's just this ultra powerful Force user who knows how to do everything. In The Force Awakens, she essentially takes all the roles. So Han was the pilot, Chewie was the dog, the co-pilot, and sort of the muscle. Leia was the princess, and also, Leia was like the reins, right? She would pull Han in when he was going too far and being an idiot. And she was the voice of reason in a lot of cases, albeit sometimes maybe emotional, but like that's what made it good and funny. Just super capable. And then, of course, R2 and 3PO and their roles and as droids and stuff like that. But it just felt like Rey was all of those characters in one. So you didn't really need anybody else. Like, Chewie's basically useless. She can fly the Falcon better than him anyway. You know, Han's useless. She can fly the Falcon better than him anyway. And knows more about it, despite him living in it for 30 years. You know, and just what they did with Han and Leia, and they're estranged. The passion's gone. You're just like, this sucks. And the reason for that? So because Ben turned bad while being trained under Luke, Han and Leia had marital problems? What? Leia wouldn't do that. She'd try to save her kids. She wouldn't, like, take it out on Han. So the whole thing, it was just awful. But having said that, I give it a 2 because you could have still, in The Last Jedi, you could have salvaged The Force Awakens. So it's terrible, but it was a 2 that they could have turned into a 5 or 6 if they had used dialogue, expository, all that stuff to explain what was going on with Rey, or maybe made Rey a solo, right? And then you could kind of see, but they just didn't. And so it gets a 2 for having the potential to maybe be an okay movie, despite it being, you know, A New Hope Part 2 and, you know, another Death Star and all that other nonsense. The other thing that really sucked about Episode 7 is there's just no explanation. All of a sudden, there's just a First Order. The Empire's not gone. So everything that happened in the first 6 movies is just completely moot. Han, Luke, Leia, all those characters, what they did meant nothing because there's still an Empire. There's a new Emperor, basically, in Snoke, who's super powerful. What did they do it all for? So that was just creatively bankrupt as well. There was no explanation. There should have at least half the movie should have been just the New Republic ruling and have a more interesting explanation as to what the heck is going on, why there's this First Order. You know, again, in my sequels reimagined, I do that. You know, they're essentially Empire remnants that are trying to create terror attacks against the New Republic, and eventually they do a massive terror attack that really damages the New Republic to the point where they're in disarray, and that's when they strike, right? That makes more sense than just, there's a new Empire. Like, so it was just a really bad setup. And then 8 and 9 get zeros. I mean, at this point, it's not even Star Wars. Luke isn't Luke. Just terrible movies. Rey just becomes more and more and more and more powerful. She has no arc, no challenges. Nothing ever happens to her. Finally, in 9, I thought she killed Chewie, and I said, you know, and she does lightning. Like, that comes from anger. And she's mad when she does it. That's the other thing about Rey's entire story, is she's angry all the time and uses anger to defeat Kylo, to do all the stuff, and never turns to the dark side. She just never has any challenges. And so when she got all mad and shot lightning, because she was mad at Ben, mad at Kylo, and killed Chewie. I was like, finally, we got about an hour left of this saga, but maybe there's going to be something interesting with this character finally, where she's faced with a challenge of, turning to the dark side or whatever, because she just did this. 5 minutes later, Chewie's still alive. It was a different transport. Like, really? Really? So these movies sucked. They're awful. Everyone should get their money back for these movies. These should be erased. The sequel trilogy should be erased from Star Wars and completely redone. I'll tell you right now, the sequels, they're so bad, they make the prequels look a lot better than they used to. I never hated the prequels, but I will say, like, I always found them to be okay, but compared to the sequels, they're like masterpieces, because the sequels are so bad. None of it makes sense. The characters go all over the place. Kylo Ren goes from scary guy in 7 to mopey, pouty loser in 8 who's just constantly simping. Back to the big evil guy, forge the helmet together again. He was all over the map. The arc was just made no sense. I struggle with the simping aspect of it, especially considering I always viewed these as monks. Like, a Sith Lord is not simping for some chick. Right? I fully get him wanting her to join him because he's a Sith. He wants to use her to further his cause. That I fully get behind. That makes sense. But the whole simping and can I touch your hand through the Force and I just found that whole thing corny, and it didn't work. If she was going to have a love interest, it should have just been Finn. That was one thing that was set up in Force Awakens. At first, he's annoying and she doesn't really like him, and then, you kind of slowly build it. That would have worked. That's been done before, and it would have worked. So, all that to say, 16 out of 30 for the prequels. Satisfactory. Story is told, although not delivered very well. 27 out of 30 for the OT. Again, I watched them in order of release. It was mind-blowing at the time. It still is very good. And there's very good acting, very good chemistry on screen, especially with Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. And it's just very well done. And Hamill just got better and better and better as the trilogy went on with his acting and his character development, all that. Same with Han. They all did. They all it's just such a well done trilogy. And then the sequels get 2 out of 30 because they're just so stupid and discombobulated, and they just don't make any sense. None of it makes sense. They didn't have a plan. They didn't know what they were doing, and they're just terrible movies. So that's my rant, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section. If you agree with some of these ratings, don't you? Do you agree with some of my reasoning behind them, or don't you? And as usual, if you do like this content, please like and subscribe. It always helps with the channel. And thank you to all the support I have been getting, you guys. It's really been wonderful. And check out anything else if you want on my channel as well. And have yourselves a really good day.